Ask now that you stand as you are able, out of respect for the reading of the gospel. The gospel today comes from Mark chapter 6. It's verses 30 through 34 and 53 through 56. Mark 6, 30 through 34 and 53 through 56. Here the gospel reads. The apostles gathered around Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. And he said to them, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a deserted place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they hurried there on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. As he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. When they had crossed over, they came to land at Gennesaret and moored the boat. When they got out of the boat, people at once recognized him and rushed about that whole region and began to bring the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages or cities or farms, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged him that they might touch even the fringe of his cloak, and all who touched it were healed. Hear this, the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
Well, it's July, and if you live in Georgia, you know what to expect in July. It's hot, humid, stormy. We talked about hail, well, not H-E-L-L, but H-I-L, H-A-I-L. See, I know the other hail better than I know that hail. My garage door was broken, and I was desperately trying to get it fixed, but I manually raised it to pull my car in, and then the neighbor came over and put it back on track for me so I could let it down. And I was telling these folks right here on the front row about that, and one of these guys down here said, "I tried to get my car out in the hail so I could claim the insurance on it." That's July in Georgia. There's a few things you can count on. You can count on thunderstorms. You can count on it being hot. You can count on the attendance being down in worship. People take vacations, rightly so. Staff takes vacations, and rightly so. I'll be glad when school starts back and we all get back home and all the chickadees are here and we get back into a good routine. I'm probably one of the few people in the world that love Mondays. I like to get in that routine. You can count on the offering being low. July. I don't understand that, because if you pledge or you tithe, do you say except for July? If you're saying that, you're real wrong. So you need to stop saying that on your pledge card. But the church has to keep the lights on. In fact, the matter is, the July bill is probably one of the highest utility bills we get, because we try to keep it cool in here for you, because you won't come if it's hot. You'll stay at home where your air conditioner works. Vacations take their toll. They just do. As good as they are, as nice as they are, as needed as they are, it takes its toll, because the wheels on the bus have to keep going round and round. And we need to understand that if we're on a journey, any kind of journey, that's one thing, but if we're really on a spiritual journey where we don't get to a destination and say, okay, I got it all now, I don't have to keep traveling on, I got it. But we're going to keep traveling on, and we're going to keep trying to learn, and we're going to keep trying to draw closer to Christ, then there's no vacation from that. You'll still have experiences, you'll still have learning opportunities, you'll still have witnessing opportunities, you'll still have serving opportunities, even on vacations. And just for your knowledge, ain't no such thing as retirement if you're a Christian. You don't get to retire from being Christian. And part of being Christian means being a disciple, means being in service, means praying up. All those things, studying, reading your Bible. And John Wesley said that, and so did Jesus. But he recognized that people need sometimes to take a break. Now, Mark, we've talked about this before, Mark sandwiches stories. He tells a story, and then he tells another story in the story, and then he tells the other part of the story. And so we call that sandwiching. Here's the piece of bread. You'll remember, not last week, but the week before, here's the piece of bread. And he talked about Jesus being a prophet in his own hometown and how he was powerless in his own hometown. People didn't have faith in him. That was Mary and Joe's boy. Then right in the middle of that, he sent those disciples out right at the end of that little piece of it. And then right in the middle of that, we beheaded John the Baptist. Remember, last week we beheaded John the Baptist. Now he's coming back with the other piece of bread that goes on the other end, and the disciples have gotten back from the sending forth that happened before the beheading of John the Baptist. That's how Mark writes. It says that Jesus recognized that they were tired. It says that he knew they needed some time away, and so he sent them across the lake, across the Sea of Galilee, over close to Capernaum. And he said, we'll go over there and rest for a while. But when they got to that side, there were all these people that came closing in on them, and the scripture says Jesus had compassion on them as they were sheep without a shepherd. Now, I don't know how many of you ever had a farm and had any livestock on it, but I'm telling you, sheep are dumb as rocks. They just are that dumb. They will stand beside moving water, and they will watch that water moving, and they will get dizzy from watch it moving, and they'll fall over and stand there and just keep watching it. That's why Psalms 23 says, he will lead me beside the still waters. Pigs are smart. I love pigs. If I was going to raise any kind of animals for profit, it would be pigs. They are smart. They are smarter than cows, and they are smarter than sheep. And goats are the cutest little things you've ever seen, but they grow up to be dumb as rocks. Jesus says they were sheep without a shepherd, and he had compassion on them. So these folks probably weren't your run-of-the-mill, going to the synagogue folks. These folks were marginal. Some of them were poor. Some of them were oppressed. Some of them were uneducated. Some of them were women, and there was no real place for them. Some of them were sick. Most of them were people that society had shunned and were outcast. And according to the text, Jesus began to teach them. He actually fed them, but that's next week. See how Mark's going to sandwich this again? We'll make a triple-decker out of this one. And then he drew his disciples around him and said, I know you need to rest. But everywhere he went, he drew a crowd. His reputation had gone before him, and people would recognize him, and they would go and get the sick folks, and they would bring the sick folks to him. And they believed that if they could just get close enough to touch him, that they would be healed, or their loved one would be healed. And so they began to push forward and push in on them. That's what the text says. It says, being close to Jesus changes us. It's a text about our own spiritual journey. It is a text about transformation. It is about having a personal experience with Christ. But I want to tell you that what this text doesn't say is just as important, if not more so, than what it does say. It says in this text that Christ can heal us, that people came seeking. It says that people came from miles around and they pushed their way forward. It says they sought him. But what it doesn't say is they sought him so that they could see what they could do for him, for his kingdom. It says they came to have their sins forgiven. They came to be healed. They came because they were worried. They came because they were anxious. It says it was all about them. No one came saying, "What can I do for you?" They came saying, "What can you do for me?" They came asking, "Okay, Jesus, here's my expectations of you." Some people come to the church that way. What can the church do for me? We need the church more than we think we do, but some people don't realize that until they need the church. I can't tell you what having a church and a church family does for me when I'm in crisis, when my granddaughter's baby is so sick and I know there's a whole army out there praying for him. I need the church. Some people come to church because that's the thing you do and their mamas and daddies taught them that. Some people come to church because their mamas and daddies make them. Some people come to church because they feel guilty if they don't, and they'll just come get it out of the way so they can not feel guilty for the next week. And some people want to see their friends, and so they come. Few people actually come thinking that they will be able to thank God for all his blessings. Many of us come to be accepted because this is a place where we will be, no matter what, we will be accepted. But how many of us come saying, like Chick-fil-A, how may I serve the church? What can I do for the church? What can I do for Christ? What can I do to help usher in the kingdom? I love Chick-fil-A. I think they should come do a Wednesday night supper for us and not just bring the sandwiches with them, but teach us how to say, "How may I serve you? How may I serve you?" And then when they get that down, when we really get the gist of what they're saying about how may I serve you, then they can come and teach us how to say, "Our pleasure," when we get through serving. Chick-fil-A's got it going on. And when I finished this at 9:30, 3 people came to me and said, "I wish Chick-fil-A was open today." I said, "Yeah, me too. I wish I'd have bought one yesterday and put it in the refrigerator at home." Our students got a taste of that. They just got back from Puerto Rico. I told them on Friday night before they left, now, don't go down there reaching down trying to help somebody up. Go reaching out, because I can tell you that you're going to learn more than you teach. They didn't believe me, but they came back saying just that. And today McCade stood up during the sermon at 9:30 and said, "This is what I learned." And he said that very thing. I went down there thinking I was going to be serving them, and instead they were serving us. He's got it. The kids got it. And that's where real healing begins. That's where real spiritual journeys begin. We get so caught up in this destination we're on when we're traveling this journey. We're looking at our watches. Some of you want to right now, but you won't because you know I'm watching you. How long is this going to take? How much further? When can we stop for a bathroom break? When do we go on vacation? This spiritual journey. It's about the destination. We want there to be a one-time event, so we got it, and we don't have to practice this anymore. But Jesus and John Wesley said, you must strive toward perfection, and you must never stop. Many of us wonder if we're almost there and we're hanging on to get to the destination. But I'm here to tell you this morning that the destination is not nearly as important as the journey. Because grabbing hold to the hand of God Almighty, grabbing hold to the hand of Jesus Christ, it doesn't matter how long it takes. We keep keeping on. We keep traveling on. And pretty soon we realize that the curves are getting a little straighter and the mountains are getting a little lower and we're getting a little more faithful. What this text doesn't say is all these people came to see how they might serve Christ. They came seeing what Christ could do for them. Anymore, people don't even look for a church by denomination. You move to a different town and you don't go looking for a Methodist church. You go looking for a church because you want to know what the church can do for you. And in looking for that church, you want to know if the preacher can preach enough to keep you awake through the sermon, because if you fall asleep, it's the preacher's fault and nobody else's. You go looking to see if I can be a little bit entertained and not bored to death when the preacher stands up and begins to read to you out of a book someplace, because you don't like that when the preacher reads to you. I don't blame you. I mean, you got educations. You can read the same book I read. We come looking to see where we might have our daughter's wedding or our son's wedding or our grandchild's wedding or our niece or nephew's wedding or the neighbor's wedding. Or where we can have a funeral, because it's cheaper here than it is at the funeral home. I can guarantee you that. You come to see what kind of programs we have for children. And do we have at least 2 weeks out of the summer that we can babysit for you with Vacation Bible School or something else going on? Some people come to the church, a lot of people do come to the church looking to see how the church can serve them. Are there activities for me? Is there fellowship for me? Is there supper for me? Is there something for me? And that's why we come. Very few people join the church and look at me and say, I'd like to know how I can serve. Plug me in someplace where I'm needed. Any place will do. I just want to serve Christ. Doesn't happen very often. Jared and I were able to go with the summer lunch program the other day, Thursday. Now, how many of you help with that? If you help with that, will you just stand up where you are and just kind of wave at everybody and let them see that you help with that summer lunch program? They don't even let me, yeah, good for you. They don't even let me put sandwiches together because I don't match the bread even. I just am no good in the kitchen. And so, but we went down and said, we want to go help give them out. And they were very gracious and said, okay, you follow me, and off we go. And lots of you have been down there making sandwiches. Thursday, we took chicken, coleslaw, cookies, bread, something to drink, and then we were teaching them the Lord's Prayer in addition to that. Tony and Jan have done a great job with the summer feeding program this year. So we go off doing this, and Miss Gwen is with us. You know Miss Gwen? Miss Gwen is so conscientious that she takes cat food with her and opens it up and feeds the stray cats while we're there. One cat ate 2 cans, and she said, oh, I should have brought some more. I'll come back tomorrow and feed him again. And I thought, Lord, have mercy. Once when we pulled up, those children coming to get those brown bags weren't there. And so we had to wait for a few minutes. And so we parked the car, and I began to talk to the 2 young men that were with us. Maybe they were 8 or 9 years old. And I said, tell me about this Lord's Prayer. And they said, well, we don't really know what it means. I mean, words like hallowed, how do we know that? And I said, well, most of the adults don't know what that means either. And so we were talking about it, and I said, let me see if I can explain it to you this way. And we got to the line that said, give us this day our daily bread. And I said to them, you see, these children have prayed that because they were hungry. And then you've become the hands and feet of Christ, and you've given them their daily bread in the name of Christ. And they'll keep praying it, and we'll keep giving it. You see how that works? And you could see the lights come on. Oh, yeah, this is real. I didn't even know those neighborhoods existed. Trailer parks that you can throw a rock and hit from here. Hid behind big houses, commercial properties. I'm so glad I went. The children had asked for prayers, and I had a list of the prayers they had asked for, and there was not one child that had asked for a bicycle or for a toy or for a new book bag or any of those things. Pray for my mother who is sick. Pray for my grandmother. Would you pray for my brother, please? He's in trouble. And on it went with prayers that they had asked for. And once again, I realized you just can't learn it all. There's just no way. You learn it a little bit by a little bit, and you usually learn the most when you think you're serving somebody else, when you're turning outward instead of inward. I'm going to give you one more example of the boys that were stuck in the cave. Now, I'm going to put this away after today for a while, because this will be the 3rd Sunday in a row I've used those boys for an illustration, but this is rich. See, I was fascinated. They were Buddhist, but the Christian ethics that were intertwined with that Buddhist belief they had was just so solid. And so I kept reading about them, and I kept looking up things about them. And they were sitting in that cave. They'd gone in. They thought they would go in and be quick, and then they would come out, and they wouldn't be gone more than an hour. But the rain came, and then it flooded in there, and they couldn't get out. That things didn't look familiar when it started filling up with water, and they didn't know the way out. And if it kept raining, they were going to drown in there because they didn't know the way out. And so there they were, and their coach got them into a meditation, what we would call prayer, to keep them calm, to keep them from panicking, to keep them from being anxious. And then they began to hear voices, but they couldn't see anything. And the coach sent the only one who speaks English, about 14 years old, around some rock formations so he could see what was going on. When he got there, a Navy SEAL popped up out of that dark, murky, dirty water. And as soon as the boy saw him, this is what he said. The boy, "Welcome. How can I help you?" Not, "Did you come to save us?" Not, "Good, we need help." Not, "How are you going to get us out of here?" But, "How may I help you?" And I'm saying to you today, it is time for us to come to Jesus and ask the question. You're going to save us. We know you're going to save us. How can we help you? How may I serve you? It is time for us to offer Christ our time, our talents, our gifts, our service, our very lives, our witness. After all, isn't that what he gave to us?